You would think this many years into this, I would know to unmute myself. My apologies. I got the video off though. Good evening. How are you doing on a Monday evening? Thank you for joining us. And so good to see so many familiar faces, including a neighbor I see on here as well. Hi. So thank you for joining me. We're going to be spending the next hour and a half together talking about children's play and how to infuse their home culture as well as their home language. So my name is Tammy King. I work with Karen at Early Childhood Professional Learning. And without further ado, let's get started. Just a moment as I find the controls. I'm using a computer I don't typically use, so I have to figure out where the PowerPoint slide thing is. There we go. Cool. So here's what I would like to know, knowing that it is still cold and snowy outside and that there is just so very much going on both in our programs and in the world around us. How are you feeling at this point in time, whether it's how you're feeling at school, at work, at home? How are you doing? It's the beginning of February, and apparently the groundhog saw his shadow, so we've got 6 more weeks of winter coming our way. So do you feel like you're kind of treading water at this point, swimming laps, like you're doing okay, just keep on trucking? You really need somebody to throw you a life preserver. Like how are you feeling this evening? Truly, how are you feeling? So you should be able to click a button. I'm seeing the little bar graphs shifting back and forth as more people respond. I'll give you a second to figure out where you're at. Right now, it seems to be a bit of a competition between treading water and swimming laps, but need a life preservers. There's a lot of us in that category as well. Just a sec, there's something in the chat. Let me check. Okay. Oh, thank you, Karen. I saw that. Okay. Awesome. All right. So one more second to log your answers because it looks like we've got almost everybody has participated. 90% of you have answered. Thank you. 5 of you have not. So if you haven't done it yet, click a button. What do you think? If you can, click a button on treading water, swimming laps, need a life preserver. All right. So we'll go with that. 90% respondents. Here is where we are at. Let me share the results. You can see almost half of you have said you're treading water, like you're keeping your head above water at this point, but you're not at the point of swimming laps, right? Another 33% or so are swimming laps, and the rest of us feel like we could use a life preserver this Monday afternoon. Personally, I would just love to look out a window and see anything that doesn't look like more snow. But that's what I get for living here. Cool. All right. Thank you. That is helpful for me to know kind of how you're feeling this evening. So here is what we're going to be talking about. Here's our goal for the next hour and a half together. If I could actually get my slides to advance. I have 2 screens and I just tried to advance the wrong screen. So let's see. There you go. That worked better. Very good. So our goal this evening in this session is to seek to cultivate for all of us on the call how to kind of reflect on what we've been doing as professionals in the early childhood field and help us figure out how to create play scenarios or play situations or play invitations, however you want to look at it, for the children in our care that are tied to their culture. They're culturally relevant and linguistically relevant for the kids in our care so that they engage with what we're asking them to do maybe at a new level. So that's what we're hoping to do. And hopefully we're going to do it in a interesting way for you. Here are some agreements that I would like to put out there for the next hour and a half together. I would ask that you be as present as you can possibly be, knowing that it's a Monday, knowing that you've already worked a full day. It's, dinner time, and maybe it's dinner time for your kids or your puppy or whoever the case may be, right? But please, if you can, be as mentally present as you can be. And if physically present is awesome too. So if you can keep your camera on, that's cool. But I also get that sometimes you got to turn it off, and that's okay too. We're going to be talking about culturally and linguistically relevant practices. And sometimes, if this is the first training that you've ever done on this kind of topic, you might be hesitant to ask questions or know how to word things because you don't want to say something that might come off as offensive. I'm going to ask that we all give each other the benefit of the doubt and know that maybe sometimes the question might not come out or the statement might not come out quite the way we thought it sounded in our head, but I'd rather the question get out there and we have the conversation this evening, right? So we're going to give each other a little bit of grace, knowing that some of us, really need a life preserver. And we'll give each other the benefit of the doubt. Be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe take at least one risk in the next hour and a half. Maybe it's holding back and not asking a question and giving others more airtime. Or maybe for you, taking a risk is raising your hand or typing a message into the chat that you might not normally do. And no, too, or I am going to ask that you be okay with agreeing to disagree this evening. We are not here to find consensus or solve world peace or solve everything that's wrong in the world in the next 90 minutes. Wouldn't that be nice if we could, but we can't. So we're going to have some level of disagreement, I think, by the time we get off here today. But at least we're going to give it a shot, right? And we're going to think about and reflect on ways we've been teaching and maybe trying out some new ways when we get back to the classroom. So far, so good. For those of you that I can see, can you give me a thumbs up if that sounds all right? Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. I always love it when you guys have your cameras on because otherwise I feel like I'm just talking to the wall over here. So thank you. Here are our main objectives. First, we're going to review some stages of play from a couple of authors. It's an article that's been around for a while. I believe it was part of your handouts. It's possible you've never heard of them before, and that's totally okay. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why I do this session is to introduce you to their work. Then we're going to reflect on our current teaching practices, things you've been doing in the classroom or you're thinking about doing in the classroom. And then we're going to plan for a new dramatic play area. We're going to focus on dramatic play this evening, on finding a way to make your dramatic play area a little more culturally relevant or reflective of the kids that you have in your room. And share thoughts and share our ideas with each other. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I'll throw it out there now just so that you know. My job here at ECPL, Early Childhood Professional Learning, is to help support preschool for all expansion teachers across the state of Illinois, or anybody else that's on this webinar, as long as you teach preschool, on how to best serve the children in your care who speak languages other than English or whose families speak languages other than English. My background is in English as a second language and in bilingual education. I've been in this field for over 25 years. Working from pre-kindergarten all the way up to high school, providing all kinds of trainings for teachers and administrators on English as a second language and bilingual education. My only other language really is Spanish, and that is my second language. Though I do know a few words here and there from the kids I've taught over the years that they have, taught me along the way, indirectly or otherwise. So with that being said, let's get this out on the table, all right? Dual language learner, DLL, dual language learner, ELL, English language learner, EL, English learner, multilingual children, simultaneous bilinguals, sequential bilinguals. These are all different terms that we throw around in my field as if everybody in the world actually knew what they meant. So let's just take a moment and take a deep breath and just say this. All of these terms are totally okay to use. None of them are offensive in any way, shape, or form, but different groups of people use them depending on where we're talking about. So dual language learner, DLL. I should also say, they all have slightly different nuances of meaning, but for the purposes of tonight's webinar, it's cool if you use any of them. I'll know what you mean. Dual language learner is typically used at the national level by national organizations like NAEYC likes to use dual language learner, DEC, NABE, National Association of Bilingual Education. Their conference is next week in Chicago at McCormick. They tend to use the term dual language learner. Here in Illinois, we don't use it very much because it causes a ton of confusion in the school age world with dual language programming, which is something completely different. So just know that I don't use dual language learner, but I know that a ton of people do because of that confusion with the K-12 world. Dual language learner means that a child is growing up with exposure to more than one language and they're in the process of acquiring more than one language. It has nothing to do with the teacher or the language of instruction or any of that kind of stuff. It's just another name for, with some nuances of meaning, multilingual children, okay? English language learner is the old term in Illinois in terms of Illinois school code. English learner is the newer term because apparently you wait long enough, they drop a letter. Still means the same thing. That's the term that's used in Illinois law. Multilingual children is probably my favorite term of the ones currently being used because a lot of our kids actually speak more than two languages, even in preschool. I've had kids that speak 3-4 different languages at the young age of 4 or 5 years old because of the different languages they're exposed to in their environment and the different settings that they're in throughout the day. So multilingual children is used more in books and things, educational books, It's used by the WIDA consortium, of which Illinois is a member. And then I think just in general, we tend to use it more in our field now than some of these other terms. Again, nothing's wrong with any of them, different nuances in meaning, but basically they're all fine and none of them are offensive in any way. That's, I think, the big takeaway. All right. Also, I just want to let you know, because I see some stuff popping in the chat, I'm really bad about reading and talking and clicking at the same time. So please know I will look at the chat, but I can't do it right now, or it's going to totally derail me at the moment. And it's going to make for a really long presentation where I'm just like wandering all over the place. It'll be like watching a train wreck in slow motion. So know that I'll get there, but it's going to be a little while before I look at the chat box. All right. So why are we talking about this stuff tonight? Why is this important? I mean, if you want to start with some national perspective on some things, the NAEYC or NACE position statement on advancing equity and diversity in early childhood education talks about the importance of culturally and linguistically relevant practice. The Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards talk about this as well in the domains of social studies, as well as goals 28 and 29, which are the English language learner home language development standards. Compliance checklist. If you live in that world of the compliance checklist, we talk about it there as well. When we talk about, let's see, compliance checklist, I got to check my notes. 16, 31, 32, 33. Those are the ones on the compliance checklist. If you need to cite those to somebody, they talk about family education involvement, parent engagement, family goal setting, active parent advisory councils that are inclusive of a diverse range of family perspectives. Tons of reasons why we need to have these conversations and incorporate more into our classrooms. And from a very practical perspective, kids engage differently with things they're familiar with. They will get to higher levels of play, higher levels of language, if they understand what the stuff is that's around them and they recognize it. So if the dramatic play area, for example, is full of materials and foods and, like let's say it's a grocery store, right? And all the stuff in your grocery store is stuff that they've never seen before. Well, they're not going to know what to do with it. And they may not play as long in there as a result. But if they do know what the stuff is, they're going to engage with it in a different way, a more robust way that will stretch their language, stretch their social skills, and all that. All right. Oh, also screenings, parent volunteers. Oh my goodness. If you've got stuff that parents recognize, maybe even stuff they donated from their homes in your dramatic play area, it's going to be a lot easier to get parents to come and volunteer in your classroom and hang out. In fact, a lot of parents tend to hang out in dramatic play when given that option, even over reading a book, which might be stressful if you've never done that, to a classroom full of kids. Parents like hanging out there, in my experience, or family members, I should say. It doesn't have to just be parents. Talked about NACE, talked about IELTS, talked about ECHRS, lots of different reasons, right? It's just good practice. It's recognizing that our children do not come to us as empty vessels, but rather come to us with a lifetime of experiences, even if that lifetime is only 36 months, and change. Still, that's a lot of time. All right. So what kind of things do children learn through play? Could you do me a favor? I'm going to take a look at the chat box real quick at some of the things that were in here, but could you just stop and think for a moment, just to yourself? No need to do anything in the moment, but just think, what is it that you see your kids learning through play? And while you think, I'm going to skim through the chat box. So give me just a moment. Oh, a lot of people introducing themselves. Okay. Oh, no worries, Jill. I see your message about the video. I totally get that. My other device has that problem regularly. Oh, welcome, Michelle from USF Bay Area. I think that means San Francisco. It's warmer where you are, I bet. I don't know where we are. Cool. All right, socialization, cooperation. I see some folks dropping a few things in the chat. Problem solving. You don't have to, but that's awesome that you are. Thank you. Excellent. Chance to role play, problem solve, communication, speech, language, social skills, math. I mean, it kind of depends what they're playing with, right? But when you present them and give them things to invite them to play, oh, Tampa, Florida, I saw that. Well, whatever. It's still warmer, I bet, where you are than we are here. Lots of things they can imitate, they can try out, they can take risks, engage with children they may not normally engage with in certain parts, depending on what the things are that they're engaging with. And role-playing life, we're going to talk about that, right? That's a big part of why we're doing this session. Self-help skills. Excellent. Excellent. Cool. Thank you for all those ideas. Language development. First language development. I mean, even if you're not a bilingual teacher, you can still allow the use of your children's native languages in your classroom. And the dramatic play area is a great place to let them use all of their languages and combinations of the languages that they speak. Let them communicate, right? Because that's really what the key is here. It's about communication and using language as a tool, all of the languages that they use, not just English. Okay, executive functioning. I didn't catch that in there, but it might have been in that stream of answers that you put. I did see social emotional skills, persistence at play, or just persistence in general. You can see that come out and play as well. When you really want to build something that's of a certain size or a certain kind of structure, like let's talk about blocks, right? Like persistence, right? Because it keeps falling over, but man, I'm going to build it because I really want to build this thing, whatever it is that I've got in my mind. See persistence as well coming through play. Cool. Awesome. All right. So here is what I wanted to talk a little bit about as well. So Daniel Elkinen, you don't need to remember this name. Like there's no quiz at the end, right? Did I? Hold on one sec. Oh, building confidence. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry. I saw something pop up and needed to see what that was. Daniel Elkinen back in 1978, so that was a while ago, said this: a child first starts playing with things like feeding herself with a spoon, as you see in this picture here, right? Because now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about stages of play. First, she may be feeding herself with a spoon, but then she uses that spoon to feed everybody else that's around her, right? We've seen this kind of thing in the classroom or in care. Then maybe she uses that spoon to feed her doll. And finally, over time, you may see that child feed the doll pretending to be mommy, who is feeding her daughter. It's at this later stage, it's this idea of stages, right? With this little example, that we're no longer talking about the spoon. It's not about the stuff. So as we're thinking about today, I want you to think beyond just the stuff. I'm not telling you or asking you to go out and spend, oodles of money on all sorts of things for your classroom. I'm saying, let's think about the stuff we already have and how to use it differently to get our kids to higher levels of play. Not just where she's pretend feeding herself with a spoon, but getting to that point where it's no longer about the spoon at all, but she's taking on a role of a mother feeding a daughter in this particular example, right? Because now the play is about the relationship that she's acting out, mimicking real life, as somebody said, right? That's where we're going to see the growth in language and social skills, executive, like all these different things, right? Because we're extending the play beyond just about the stuff and into the role playing and using language in a different way. All right. So far, so good. I see a lot of people, looks like you're scribbling notes down. So cool. All right. This one's a little bit tough, but we're going to go there. Reaching preschool age does not guarantee that children's play has moved beyond the toy-oriented play I was just giving you an example of. There was a time, decades ago, generation ago, whenever we want to point to it, where just getting older somehow meant you got to higher levels of play, right? The authors of this particular article I'm going to share with you present a ton of different reasons why. I'm just going to summarize it briefly for you here, but please know you can go back and take a look at the article from Bodrova and Leon that talk about this. But so many of our preschoolers today continue to engage in play in a way that would be appropriate for a 2-year-old, not something that would be appropriate for a 4-year-old. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you more by what I mean about that in just a second. But to use the example from a moment ago, it's where they're still just using the toy as that toy, but not using it as a symbol of something else, right? Normally, 4-year-olds have way outgrown that, or 5-year-olds. But what we're finding is that's not necessarily the case for a lot of our kids. And again, the article explains some of the reasons why: screen time, lots of structured time for our kids, not a lot of unstructured time to figure out what to do with themselves while they're, sitting in the backyard under a tree with a bunch of mud, or whatever. That might have been part of our childhood experiences. Lots of different things contributing to it. But the point is the children are reaching this age, not getting past those toy-oriented levels of play. So before I dive deep into these levels of play and kind of talk you through the propels stages as the authors outline them, it would be helpful for me to know how familiar you are with this. I am assuming that most of you have never heard of this before, and that's totally fine if that is the case. But if by chance somebody here did their doctorate on this, that would be good for me to know before I launch into this explanation, right? Okay, here are the stages. Before you panic, this is not meant to be an eye test. Okay, really, truly, it's not. Also, you have this entire chart in the handouts. I just want to quickly walk you through this, and it is on purpose grayed out because I just want to show you the thing on the left-hand side first. So see where the big blue thing is? In your handout, there's a 2-page handout that was connected on the same email that had the Zoom link that got you on this call today. There was a link that says handouts. When you get there, you'll see this handout says ECPL. On the digital version of this handout, there's a ton of links I put for you down at the bottom. Link A, as it says on your screen right now, link A will take you right to this. Okay. You don't have to do it right now. I'm just letting you know that's where it is. Okay. Propels stands for, you see here on the left-hand side, plan, roles, props, extended time frame, language, and scenario. That's where they get propels from. And then they go through 5 levels of play. Here's what I want you to know at this point. First of all, the people who wrote this article, love the article. They don't specifically talk about multilingual learners at all in it. So we're going to first talk about their stages of play. Then I'm going to bring some multilingual kind of ideas to you, and then we're going to put it all together, right? But first, I thought it was important that we have levels of play to talk about. So let's just look at one. I think we're going to look at 1, 3, and 5, if I remember correctly. That's how I did this. First scripts is what they call level 1. So think about the kids in your care right now. Is there anybody, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but think about it. Is there anyone in your care right now in your classrooms that you might say are at like a level 1 in terms of play right now? A level 1 from the Propels perspective is they don't plan their play. You know, they don't plan what they're going to do. They don't make like a play plan or something like that. They don't have any roles in their play. Like they don't take on the role of mommy or daddy or, you know, I don't know, whatever. They play with objects as the objects that they are. So it's very toy oriented. They may explore the objects, but not play scenarios. If you're going, no, my kids aren't like this, think to like your days. If you ever worked with toddlers, think about how they engage with a lot of toys. It can be that kind of thing, right? Like they get a toy screwdriver and they use it as a screwdriver, but they're not necessarily using it as like a pretend phone or whatever it is that they're, you know, looking for. They're not using a ton of language. There's no scenario. They maybe just copy what they've seen other adults do and follow teacher directions and scripts. And things seem to be relatively simple and repetitive. So that would be what they would consider a level 1 or first scripts. Let's jump to 3. I'm on purpose skipping over 2 for the interest of time. Okay. 3, roles with rules and beginning scenarios. So here at the plan stage, they do plan their roles out. You know, like kids take on different roles. Like you're going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, whomever, right? And you're going to be the other one or whatever. Their actions are named prior to their play. Like maybe you're going to be the captain of the boat and you're going to be the fisherman. Okay. And they assign those roles before they get started. They have roles with rules, but those rules can be violated. Maybe they need a prop. They're still kind of prop or toy dependent for that particular role. Their scenarios maybe last 10, 15 minutes. They use some language that describes the roles, plays familiar, scripts fully, accepts new script ideas. Okay, so this is a much more mature level of play by level 3. Children start to coordinate their pretend actions with their play partners, making sure that these pretend actions go with the roles chosen by each of the players. When children are at this stage, it's common to hear them correcting each other and correcting their behaviors when those behaviors are not in line with the roles that the children are supposed to be playing. So like, for example, a child might comment if the patient starts playing with the doctor's stethoscope or the sales associate walks off with the shoes that they were trying to sell them in a shoe store, right? Like, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be, you know, buying the shoes first, right? Or whatever. So you hear the kids kind of correcting each other. They're getting the idea of roles, right? You can see where conflict management comes in, right? Now they have to negotiate and grit and all that kind of cool stuff and persistence. All right. Level 4, let's talk about this real quick. So stage 4, because this might be, your kids might be like in 3, 4, and 5. How many of you have kids at level 3, would you say? Potentially. Some kids at level 3? Yeah. Okay. So that rings true for some folks. Cool. All right. Let's look at 4 then and see if this resonates. Children engage in multiple pretend actions, all consistent with the roles that they're playing while acting out more complex scenarios. So let me give you a little vignette. It's the 3rd week that Miss Soto's preschool classroom has been turned into an airport. The literacy center has become a ticket counter. There's a travel agency complete with child-made passports, tickets, travel brochures. The block area the children have constructed a walk-through X-ray scanner from the cardboard boxes. A smaller box with openings on both ends functions as a screening device for carry-on luggage. There's an airplane cockpit made out of a big piece of cardboard with child-drawn instruments all over it. Maybe an upside-down egg carton is serving as a keyboard, and a paper plate functions as the steering wheel. Sophia tells her friend Vince that she's going on a trip, and she's going to forget to take out her water bottle. Then she's not going to be able to get through security. And Vince says he's going to go to Puerto Rico, where his grandma lives. Sophia puts on her backpack and stands in line behind Vince. Finally, it's her turn. Where are you going? Asked Tanya, the child behind the counter. I'm going to Puerto Rico too. Okay, here's your passport. Okay, I get it. Like, there's no passports for Puerto Rico. But anyway, okay, here's your passport and your ticket to Puerto Rico. Your flight leaves at 77 o'clock. Tanya hands 2 pieces of torn construction paper over to Sophia. Sophia goes to another center, takes off her shoes. She puts them in a basket with her backpack and then pushes the basket through that like cardboard scanner I was telling you about earlier. Amir, who's the security guard, waits until Sophia walks through the X-ray frame, then waves a paper towel roll wand over her head and says, okay, you can go now. But another security guard, Milda, is standing with Sophia's backpack, holding her bottle of water that Sophia forgot to take out of her backpack. This is more than 3 ounces. Oh, I forgot. I'll put it in my cubby, she says, runs off, puts the bottle in her cubby, and then her next stop is the passenger lounge on her way to Puerto Rico. Do you have kids playing like that in your classroom? I mean, not this exact scenario, right? But like that kind of thing where they're planning out scenarios ahead of time and engaging with, cardboard that can mean just about anything, right? Depending on what they drew on it. Are you seeing a little bit of that? Maybe. Oh, I see some stuff popping up in the chat. Let's see. Okay, some people saying yes, maybe a couple of kids at 3, some at 4, yes, in one of the classes. So some yes, some no. So it sounds like a mixed bag for level 4. Would you believe there's a level 5? Let's take a look at that for a second, all right? Humor me here. Because I know level 4 is a bit of a stretch. Let's look at level 5. What could this be? Level 5 is dramatization, multiple themes, multiple roles, and director's play. So elaborate themes, scenarios, complex roles, more time planning, sometimes even more time planning than actually playing the scenario. Maybe you play more than one role. The roles have social relationships. You can pretend rather than actually relying on a prop at this point. Like you just have like a pantomime, whatever it is, right? Scenarios last days. Over several days, you can interrupt the play and they can come back to it and restart it. Working on memory. Uses language to delineate the scenario, the roles, the action. Book speech might even be incorporated into what they're doing. I'm down here, what is this, language under number 5. So it may play off of some of the books that you're reading in the classroom. Series of coordinated scenarios that change in response to previous ones, the desires of the players, and so on and so forth. Maybe the themes come from books that they've read or seen or heard. So at stage 5, playing and negotiating pretend actions starts to take on more time than actually carrying them out. It's at this stage that children sometimes play multiple roles without actually having physical partners. So like maybe the doll becomes, or like a stuffed animal or whatever. And they both direct and act out the roles with stuffed animals or maybe even imaginary partners. Sometimes our families might be seeing this at home, right? And wouldn't that be cool that we can, be able to encourage, especially if anybody on here is a home visitor, like encourage that kind of play in the home. Word school. All right. I'm realizing I did not queue up this video. So I'm actually going to skip over this for the sake of time because I want to make sure we get through everything I have planned for you. Whoa, that was not what I wanted to do. Just a moment. Let me back that up. On your handout, link B as in boy will take you directly to this video so that you can watch it. But I want to just point out to you in this little still shot that I have for you. This is Ava's classroom. And this is actually videos from Elgin from a number of years ago, though Ava now works in Chicago. And she actually, her kids over the course of a while in her classroom turned her dramatic play area into a yacht. So what you see here is one child fishing off the side of the yacht, wearing some kind of hat he made out of something from the cafeteria. You know, they got a pizza box thing, a pizza thing that became a life preserver. Over here, there's a steering wheel made out of a whole lot of tinfoil. One of the kids, you can't see him here, but you'll see it if you watch the video later, has 2-liter bottles of pop on his back covered in tinfoil that are supposed to be scuba diver oxygen tanks with some straws attached to it because apparently he's going to go scuba diving off the side of the yacht. They've clearly been doing this for a while and engaging with it and really having a ton of fun. And you can see how she reacts to some of the prompts in the classroom. It's a quick little video, but it's a lot of fun to see what this could look like in your classroom. And it was just a lot of cardboard and paper and paint. Nothing fancy, like price-wise, right? Maybe the fishing pole, but that could have been done with a stick or something too, or another wrapping paper roll. All right, so at this point, because we're a half hour in, questions. Could you put them in the chat box for me so I can take a look at any questions or comments that you have at this point and how you're feeling about this? Somebody commented that the scenario that I was describing with the airplane, definitely, those kids clearly had some background knowledge on flying, right? That may not be the best scenario for you in your classroom if your kids haven't been on airplanes, right? Maybe you come up with something different. But the point is we get to know what our kids know, right? And then create and prompt them to create some things around those topics. All right, so I see some comments about different levels. Yes, Nina, you are able to get to that video from the handout link, which is in the same email that you got the Zoom link from today. And Lisa, I see that you didn't get the handouts. Literally, the email that you found the Zoom link on has right below the Zoom link or right above it, it'll say in all caps handout. And that's what you want. So why is this not scrolling properly? There we go. School bus role playing is pretty popular. Yep. Camping. If your kids have a lot of camping experience, that could be a possibility. Excellent. I just want to throw out there, Stephanie or anybody else on the call, keep in mind your children's backgrounds. You want to make sure you know where your children are from and their family's experiences. For one child, a camping scenario is lovely. For another, it may bring back thoughts of being in a refugee camp. And so, know your kids and know your families, right? Doctor's office. Yep. Oh, Karen's giving us tips on how exactly to find the handout email. Awesome. Cool. All right. So I see the gears are turning. You're coming up with some ideas. Awesome. Because we're going to spend part of today doing just that in a little bit. Excellent. Oh, Brigitte, cool. Doctor's office is popular with you guys too. Cool. Excellent. All right. So let's move on to reflecting on current teaching practices. All right. We seem to be in a good spot with the stages, kind of idea, we get the concept, right? The continuum of what we're talking about, going from toy oriented to complex play that goes over days, where they have to use their language and their social skills to negotiate and create new things. All right. So the handout that I was asking you to print, if you could, that's awesome. If you did, you can write right on it. If you didn't, that's all right. Here's what it looks like. You can just grab a sheet of paper and scribble on that. Could you now take a moment to list several dramatic play center themes that you've used or plan to use? Feel free to use some of the ones that just got thrown in the chat box a moment ago, like doctor's office and camping, and some of the other ones that were in there as well. Grocery store, that's always, that's kind of a perennial one. Outer space, apple picking. I don't know, maybe something with the Olympics right now. I don't know. That seems to be a thing in my kids' school, at least. Awesome. Dress up, doctor's office. Yeah, all those kind of things. So jot some of those ideas down on the top of your page or paper, whatever you're taking notes on. Then I'd like you to move on. Oops. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to do that in a second. All right. I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds to jot down some play center themes. And then we're going to come back to question 2 in a moment. Okay. Oh my gosh. If you're having like a brain freeze and you can't come up with any ideas, check the chat box. There's like, I don't know, 20 in there right now. Great ideas in there popping up. Awesome. Thank you all. All right. Let's talk about culture. So far we got ideas on play center themes. Let's talk about how we define culture. We're going to do something called a waterfall chat. And what that means is you're going to use your fingers to type if you're able to right now. If you're driving, don't do it. You're excused. But if you're in front of a computer and you can type right now, what comes to mind when you hear the word culture? Drop the first couple of words or phrase or thoughts that you have in the chat box, and I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to have you, so like wait, type, give everybody a chance to type, get some think time, do some typing. And in a little bit, I'm going to say go, and then you're going to hit go, and it's going to be like a waterfall in the chat, okay? So first type, what do you think of when you think culture? All right, go ahead and hit go if you haven't already. All right, look at that waterfall. Tons of stuff. Food, language, traditions, customs, language, food, more food. I know, dinner time. Sorry. At least here in Chicago it is. Backgrounds, clothing. All right. Family, social groups, norms. Excellent. Toys, drink, food. Okay. Recipes. Excellent. All right. So these are some of what we would call the surface level stuff of culture. So if we think of culture as an iceberg, this is what people often first think of. Especially, I don't know about you, but like my park district will put out sometimes emails or things for the cultural arts programs, that often have to do with like, different presentations or theater work, like that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about culture beyond festivals, food, fashion, famous people, and folk tales, the big F, the 5 Fs. Yes, this is part of it. It's the part that we see easily about other cultures. But I'm going to challenge you today, in the spirit of doing something a little bit uncomfortable, to go a little bit deeper. Okay? We're going to go below the surface just a bit. And think about culture in this way. Eye behavior, like making eye contact, not making eye contact, especially with adults. Contextual conversational patterns, I'm sorry, not partners. Well, partners too. Social interaction rates, facial expressions. I am white, middle class, 3rd generation American, mostly European American. And I have found myself in conversations with folks who are maybe 1st and 2nd generation Americans, and I will ask them, how are you doing? And they answer. Like, they don't just say fine and keep on trucking, which, that's what you're like supposed to do. Like sometimes when you ask people how you doing, they like, answer because, you asked, right? That can create some cultural tension, right? Okay. This is not a workshop on cultural conflict or cross-cultural communication, but I wanted to highlight the fact that this is what I mean by things like contextual conversational patterns, social interaction rate, facial expressions, all these different kinds of things, right? Eye behavior. Many of our children are raised to not look adults in the eye because that would be disrespectful. But yet, what do we do? And okay, what in the culture I was raised in, I was raised that you had to look at somebody to show that you are showing respect. Like when you're getting reprimanded, you're supposed to look up and look them in the eye. That's incredibly uncomfortable for a lot of people. Now, if we talk about children that might be on the spectrum or have other learning differences, that's a whole nother level of difficulty and complexity to add into the eye contact piece, right? So, but with things we need to be aware of about our own culture before we can seek to understand others. We do not have time to get into all of this today, but I do want to highlight some of the deepest levels of culture, things like group decision-making, preferences for competition versus cooperation, patterns for handling emotions, for example. These are some of the cultural concepts that you might see play out in your dramatic play area and in your classroom. You might be used to looking for the food festivals, famous people, and fashion, but this is the day-to-day kind of cultural stuff that you're going to see surface. Okay? And when I'm talking about incorporating culture and tapping into culture, I'm talking about all of this, not just this top level thing, but all of this, right? Letting children bring everything that they have in their background, all of their background, into your classroom and to engage with the content and the play invitations that you have there. So here is a way to think about culture. This is just one of the many definitions out there. I'd like you, as I read this, I'd like you to think about what jumps out at you. If you want to close your eyes while I read it, that's cool. I won't assume that you're sleeping. But think about what words or phrases jump out at you. Culture is a way of seeing, perceiving, and believing. It's a way of, this way of looking at culture moves the focus away from the surface, outward aspects of culture, and points our attention to the deep structure of culture, to people's beliefs and their understandings of the world. In a sense, the like why we see what we see at the surface, right? What stands out to you from this definition? You can throw a word or a phrase in the chat if you'd like. It's the exact same definition. So a way of seeing, perceiving, and believing. It's a way of moving the focus away from the surface, outward aspects of culture, and points our attention to the deep structures of culture. Perceiving and believing. A way of seeing. Awesome. Outward signs versus what's the inward, right? Excellent. All right. So we're going for the deeper understanding of culture. There's nothing wrong with what the words you put in there before, but we're going for this deeper understanding, right? As we're talking about culture today in our classrooms. So this brings me to my next point of cultural competence. You've maybe heard this term thrown around in recent years. The definition I'm using today, this is from the National Education Association. Their definition of cultural competence is this: having an awareness of one's own culture, cultural identity, and views about difference, and the ability to learn and build on the varying cultural and community norms of our students and their families. If I don't understand my own culture, it's hard for me to recognize someone else's culture. For me, I found this to be particularly difficult in my professional life because I'm white middle-class American. I'm a fish swimming in water all day long that, is my same culture in a lot of ways, even my same accent I see on the news when I listen to the weatherman, right? Or whatever the case may be. I needed to understand how to get out of the water I've been swimming in my whole life to recognize that I do have a culture. I just happen to have it reflected to me all the time and the people around me. So for some of us, that might be where we're at today as we reflect on our own culture. For others of us, we might be very accustomed to reflecting on our own cultural background and how it compares and may be different from the cultural norms around us or of our classroom. Why is this important? Most American schools are based off white middle-class cultural norms. And so that may be very different than what our children are used to, depending on where they've come from and what their family backgrounds are, or even the countries or situations they've lived in prior to here. If you have children that have literally just moved here from a refugee camp, they've never seen stairs. So the fact that they don't know how to go upstairs doesn't mean they necessarily need occupational therapy. They just might literally need someone to show them how to go upstairs or go downstairs, right? Okay, we're going to skip over that. So we're going to talk a little bit about cultural views as well. See this little cork hanging here in the middle, and see how, depending on where you're at and how you're looking at this cork, it may look like a circle or it may look like a rectangle, depending on your perspective. But in reality, it's a three-dimensional cork or a three-dimensional cylinder. We need to understand where we're coming from and how we're looking at something to understand that we may not be seeing the whole picture. We might just be seeing a two-dimensional version of a three-dimensional thing. All right? Two people can look at the exact same thing or the exact same behavior and draw completely different conclusions from it based off of our own cultural experiences and our own life experiences. If this is something that you want to get into in your classroom more, which I would encourage you to do so, every webinar I do, I got to tell you about at least one book that I think is good for using in classrooms. This is an awesome book, and you have a link to it in your handout of somebody reading it. Handout link number letter C, as in cat. That's not how you do it. This is a really cool little video of a little cat who thinks she knows everything about how to do everything until she meets Yoshi, who's a panda. And Yoshi does things different. He does his stretches different. He eats food different. He uses chopsticks instead of a fork, right? Like he does a lot of different things differently from the way that she does it. And Lucy finally like loses it. Lucy's the cat and says, that's not how you do it. And ultimately, by the end of the book, they've become friends. But I think it's a really cool way to start these kind of conversations with kids about how there are different ways of doing things, different ways of eating, different ways of dressing, different ways of stretching. And it's not that one's right or wrong, it's just different. Different families do different things. So again, you can actually watch somebody reading this book on handout link C. All right, so that takes us to questions 2, 3, and 4. Now that we've talked a little bit about culture and language, I'd like you to take a few moments to jot down your thoughts on these questions. So question 2, because I don't want this to be an eye test for you, especially if you're on a phone. Question 2 reads, how many of your students come from the same cultural background as you? Name the cultural backgrounds and home languages represented among your students this year. How many of your students speak the same home language that you speak? That's question 2. Question 3. Consider the children in your room this year and their different physical abilities. Note any considerations that you want to remember to keep in mind as you think about making some new dramatic play areas or interest centers. Learning differences you could put in here too, not just physical ability differences. Then the last one, number 4 for right now. Describe the socioeconomic backgrounds represented in your classroom. Think about who the typical family members are that live together under the same roof, the type of home or homes that your children live in, sleeping arrangements, if you know them, ratio of bathrooms to family members, neighborhood. So like what I mean by that is, I know when I was a teacher, I had 2 families living in a 1-bedroom apartment. One family lived in the living room, one lived in the bedroom, and they had 1 bathroom for like 8 people. I'm not here to talk about, like housing rules and regs, but the fact that those kids made it to school on a regular basis on time with the children's hair done and their clothes clean and like everything. I have 2 bathrooms and 4 people in my house, and it's hard for us to get places on time. But you got like 8 people in 1 bathroom. Sometimes people tell me that they feel like their children maybe or their families don't respect education. They're getting to you with 8 people in 1 bathroom and they're there on time. That's some serious respect. Okay. Modes of and by the way, executive functioning and planning, that you got everybody in and out of that bathroom in the morning. Okay, modes of transportation used by your family members. All this kind of stuff is stuff that you want to be thinking about. Also, how many of your students share the same socioeconomic background as you? Jot that down. So that takes us through questions 2, 3, and 4. I'll give you a couple of moments to reflect on that and jot that down. If you don't know, maybe jot down what you could do after today to find out the answer to some of these questions, if you don't know them and think it might be useful to know. While you do that, I'm going to check the chat box real quick. All right, you do not need to put this in the chat box. I just want you to reflect on it for yourself as you think about planning for your classroom. One of the most important questions you can answer of these is how many kids in your classroom share the same background as you? Culture, language, socioeconomic. Do take a moment to think about that. Because if it's not something we've reflected on before, it may be that the culture that's reflected in your classroom is yours, not theirs. That the socioeconomic background that's reflected in your classroom is yours. Again, not the kids that you're serving. Okay. This is not about judgment. This is just about reflecting on it and just looking at things in a different way, right? See what we could do different. Hi, Nina. Thank you for your comment about how you share the same background, and that's exactly how you actually landed the position that you're currently in. That's great to hear that. And that's really heartening for me to hear. And I know for those that are not aware, our top 3 languages in the state of Illinois, first is Spanish, then it's Arabic, and then it's Polish. Now, Polish and Arabic sometimes flip-flop in terms of which one's more popular, but right now Arabic is the second largest non-English language in the state of Illinois. All right. Let me skip over that real quick because you did some of that already. You put some of that in the chat for me. All right, so here, let's get into the meat and potatoes of all this. Quick time check. 4:52. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. You, at the very beginning of this handout, you started to jot down some of your ideas for dramatic play areas. I'd like you to go back to that list, if you would. Add to it, cross some things out. You know, try to pick 1 or 2 of your favorites just to think a little bit more about. Either one that you've already done or maybe one that you would like to do based off of our conversation so far today. Okay? And just kind of hold that in your mind. What we're going to do next is we're going to go through this together as a whole group, and we're going to take a look at some stages. Well, let me back up. We looked at the stages of play from Boudreaux and Lyon, right? The propel stages of play, the 5 different levels going from toy-oriented up to complex play scenarios. But that was not specific to dual language learners or English learners at all. Now I'm going to present to you an article from NAEYC, N-A-E-Y-C, talking about supporting language and culturally rich dramatic play. You have the link to this article. Oh, that says handout link C. That might be wrong. It might be link D because I think I already said link C for the book. But it's on there. I know it's on there. And I double checked all the links. As of last week, they all worked. So they're there. This is a really cool article from Dr. Iracema Salinas Gonzalez and Dr. Maria Areguin. Dr. Iracema, just so you guys know, I just want to mention this to you. She's going to be doing a webinar for our office. I think it's next month. I believe it's in March in Spanish. So just check back and take a look at our calendar, see some of the things that we're offering. And you'll see that she'll be doing a session in Spanish. And please sign up for that if you speak Spanish, that you might find that interesting. Also, if anybody happens to be going to the NABE conference next week, the National Association for Bilingual Education Conference in downtown Chicago, Dr. Iracema and Dr. Ileana Alanis are going to be there and doing a presentation on early childhood as well on Tuesday of next week. So that's pretty cool. They are braving the Chicago winter from South Texas. This is a really cool article. And I think I linked a couple other ones as I recall. But they talk about in here that it's circle time on Monday morning in a South Texas Head Start classroom. The kids have noticed that the paleteria that they had there last week, which is a frozen fruit, food stand that sells frozen fruit popsicles and ice cream, is gone. And it's been put away. And they're wondering what kind of center should take its place. So that alone, the absence of materials in the center got them talking. Right? Like, ooh, what could it be next? And so they listened. And the kids talked about, the teacher proposed to them, like, what are some of the things you did this weekend? So this conversation kind of turned into what did you do over the weekend? And the kids started talking about panaderia, which is like a Mexican bakery, right? Which is very different than an American bakery, by the way. And so they started talking about that. So they ended up deciding to have their next dramatic play area be a panaderia, a Mexican style bakery. For those that have never been in a Mexican bakery, first of all, let me say this. If you, in our previous questions, answered that you have a lot of kids that are from Mexico or from Central or South America, and you are not from that background, go to your local panaderia. Like go into the kids' neighborhood, go where they go where they get food. Buy something. If you don't have allergies, just buy something that looks good and hope for the best. It probably will be okay. I've done it. It's all right. Or ask if you have allergies, right? Obviously, but like, go. I mean, plus then the kids always think it's cool if they see you like out in the wild, right? Like, ooh, teachers exist outside of school. But so here's what they did. And they outline all of this in this article. Again, you have a link to the whole thing. Phase 1, she puts in initial props in the classroom: aprons, baker's hats, bowls, baking trays, cookie sheets, all the things that you see listed here, empty spice bottles or maybe full spice bottles, extract bottles, pretend bread, photos of bread, maybe some blocks that you could use as if they were bread. a fake oven cardboard box, all these different kinds of things, right? Depending on what they had available to them, maybe a wallet, maybe a rolling pin, some Play-Doh, some gloves, and just let the kids have at it for a couple days, right? All the while the teacher is observing and documenting the conversations and things that are happening in the classroom. As she does this, right? So first the basic things, right? Then she listens and she adds. After, this is important, phase 2. So don't like put it all in there at the beginning, right? Put some in and step back and watch and observe and take notes. After the teacher has systematically observed in the classroom, she adds more stuff to push the play. Okay. So this is how we get them to higher levels of play. Is this making sense? And why we talked about the propels thing, right? How do we get them from a 3 to a 4 to a 5? Add some more stuff to extend their play. An appointment book, red boxes, bulletin board, calendar. Ooh, maybe a coffee pot for café de olla, a coffee container, some cookie cutters, a dry erase board, hair nets. You see what I'm saying here? Receipt book, tongs. Okay, why tongs? For those that have never been to a Mexican bakery, again, your homework. If you've got one near you, go. But you go in, you find a basket and you get some tongs and you serve yourself off of the shelves. It doesn't matter what these things are called. Nobody knows. Sometimes they don't even know. It just looks good and you grab it. Again, if you got allergies, play at your own risk. But you go in and you grab a basket and you fill up your own stuff. That's how it works in a Mexican bakery. All right. And you go from there. You see how the kids are going to start engaging a little bit differently now with the tongs, right? And those kids that have never been to a Mexican bakery get to see and experience a little bit of what that may be like. And some kids might be like, well, you know what? We get our bread from the local grocery store. So maybe it doesn't look quite like this. Maybe it's in a different way, but they can have some of those conversations and compare and contrast. Woo, compare and contrast is one of the best things we can teach our kids, how to communicate, right? In terms of language. So that's phase 2. All right, so this gets you from a 3 to like maybe a 4, but like, can we push them a little more? I think we could. Here's what they did. Phase 3. This is where you might get your kids up to like a level 5. Props deliberately added to enhance interest and enhance imagination and extend the play. A bakery delivery van, some kind of bakery on wheels, a timer, a cake photo album. This is my favorite by far. Imagine this play is just trucking along, all is good. And then the teacher drops in a pretend fire extinguisher. Whoa, now things just took a turn, right? The bakery just had a fire. We got a fire extinguisher. You see what I mean? Things just got interesting, right? Maybe it's pictures of celebrations, a quinceañera birthday dress. That's come on now, sweet 15 birthday party for a girl, very elaborate birthday parties, that go along with that. Again, getting kids talking and engaging and planning and doing all kinds of stuff that they might not have done if you just left it with the props from phase 1. So we deliberately add stuff as we go along to extend the play and get them to engage in different ways. All right, give me a thumbs up if you think something like this might be doable in your classroom. Again, I get that this might not be the right culture or the right example, but like this type of thing of putting things in phases. All right, this seems plausible. Cool. All right, very good. I see some stuff in the chat. Let's see where we're at. Oh, sorry that you got disconnected, but glad you're back in. Awesome. All right, excellent. Quick note about theme boxes for those of you that do stuff with Eckers and the compliance checklist. Actually, I think it's Eckers checklist item 21, according to my notes here. They talk about play theme boxes. So this is like where you could create a box, like I don't have one handy, but like a shoebox size kind of thing. And you could put just the interest theme items for that particular thing. You don't have to like completely redo the entire dramatic play area, but you pull out an interest theme box or a play theme box to add to what they're doing. So that could be something you can consider too. I believe that falls under the leisure category, according to my notes. So this, again, could be things like birthday parties, could be another theme, camping, like we were talking about, some of that kind of stuff, right? To add to your dramatic play area. So think about it in that way. It could be just a way to add to what you've got there, not a total overhaul. I'm not saying you have to build a yacht in your dramatic play area, but then again, if you did, that'd be kind of cool, like we saw before, right? So I am going to propose a couple of different possible themes. Some of these you've already thrown out there as options, but I'm going to put these out also for you to kind of noodle on, kind of chew on and think about. that might add some more dramatic, some more interest and some more culturally relevant dramatic play invitations, I guess you could say, to your dramatic play area. Maybe it's a laundromat. Again, if your children are from a socioeconomic background or from a cultural background where they're going to the laundromat a lot, maybe a laundromat, maybe an ice cream shop. Somebody mentioned public transportation, totally, riding the bus. Maybe a hair salon, a barber shop. Here's what I'd like you to do on that handout on page 2, or flip it over if you printed it double-sided. I'd like you to pick either one of my themes or one of your themes. I just want it to be something that you might actually use someday soon, okay? So pick a dramatic play theme, and I'd like you to start thinking about your initial setup, phase 1. What would you put in there initially for just phase 1? List at least 4 things, right, that reflect your students' home cultures as you currently understand them and their home environments. Also, don't forget, consider equipment that would be used by folks with disabilities, realia from home cultures, print materials in other cultures. What could you add at the beginning that goes along with your theme that you've chosen? Then I'd like you, after collecting, well, obviously this isn't going to happen like in tonight's class, but imagine if you were to watch your children, observe them play, what kind of things might you add in round 2 or phase 2? So kind of imagine that you might see your kids engaging with those play items. What could you add for phase 2? And then what could you add for phase 3? I get that phase 2 and phase 3 are hypothetical at this point, but I just want you thinking and practicing this notion of like adding to it over the course of time, okay? I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about that, to brainstorm, kind of reflect on those questions, and then we're going to go and look at them together as a group. I'm just checking my notes, but I had more about the panaderia, which I kind of already told you all that. Yeah. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. If you have any questions, you could throw those in the chat box as well. But if you could jot down your thoughts for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, going along with a theme, that would be great. All right, I see a few things coming into the chat, so I'm going to check those. Some different ideas for different possibilities, like plastic bowls, whipped cream, flour, Play-Doh, measuring cups. Again, depending on what your theme is, right? Some of those don't make any sense. Like if you're doing a hair salon, you're probably not going to do whipped cream, but we get some ideas out there. Some of those phase 1 ideas. Oops. There we go. Can I get a number of fingers if you need another minute or two? Like you need 1 more minute, 2 more minutes to kind of think and jot down some ideas. If you're feeling pretty good, like you'd be willing to start doing some sharing, then can I get a thumbs up from you? For those that I can see at least. Some folks are already typing, so clearly you're ready to share. All right. Hair salon or barber shop? What kind of things could we do for phase 1 for a hair salon or a barber shop? Think again about, consider different physical ability levels. How might you handle that? Think about ways to incorporate language for a hair salon or a barber shop. What other kind of materials might you need? Like literally materials, right? In terms of like fabric, right? But what other things might you put in there? Knowing that lice might be a concern, how have you handled that? In fact, if there's anybody who has done a hair salon or a barber shop in their classroom and would like to unmute and tell us a little bit about that, like what things you might put in at phase 1 and what you might wait and do at phase 2 or phase 3, you're welcome to do that. So either to unmute or to share in the chat. I do see some things popping up in the chat, like a price list, spray bottles, barber chair, some kind of chair. blow dryer, apron, clippers, doll heads. Oh, Stephanie, excellent. Yeah, there we go. So using doll heads would be a possibility. Brush, hair, mirror, spray bottles, flat irons, cut the cords off so nobody's plugging them in or something, right? So that there's no chance of, I mean, I just think flat irons and woof. Yarn for hair, safety scissors, string, broom. Oh, broom, dustpan. Okay, so what kind of things would you put in? A lot of these sound like they could be things that you might put in the beginning. What might you wait and hold for a level 2 or a phase 2 or phase 3 to kind of extend the play? Any ideas? The equivalent of like the fire extinguisher getting dropped into the bakery. What kind of things could really liven things up in a hair salon? Oh, excellent point about representing different hairstyles and hair textures. Yep, absolutely. Ooh, books of hairstyles to choose from. So incorporating some literacy. Yep. Fake hair dye and bows. Scheduling, phones, pictures of hairstyles, different hair textures. Or some like examples of that, cash register, color swatches if you wanted to color your hair. Interesting. Shaving cream, mousse, different boxes of hair color. Okay. Oops. There we go. Here are some examples from classrooms. Oh, a wash bowl, fake electric razor, bell on the door. This classroom, they labeled the chairs 1, 2, and 3, right? It says chair and then silla on it, which is chair in Spanish. Now we're getting the ideas about the nail salon because you saw it down here. Then the chairs can be labeled as well. Like here's where client number 1 sits, client number 2, client number 3, right? So there's kind of a thing. You see the dolls over here are waiting to get their hair done. And then there's some supplies and things up here, maybe a little coffee, section where you can grab a cup of coffee while you're waiting or something. Here you see they're using wigs. They've got some play stuff down here, some makeup, some different hairstyles. Many of the things you were already saying. Excellent. We see it all here, right? Different ideas. This here says something about dramatic play. And then the price list with some pictures to help, right? So here, this is about getting your nails done. I would love to know where I could get my nails done for $3. Haircut, $4. Ooh, look at this too. They also put the 3 dots. If symbols aren't working for you yet in terms of numbers, you got the 3 dots. So you still are communicating, right? A corte, a haircut. Hair wash, lavado, $5. Peinado, that means like a hairdo, $7. Right? So they got the different price lists. Ooh, music. Oh, interesting. Like making a playlist or something, right? For the hair salon. ATM machine, some way to pay for it. Interesting. Cool. All right. Let's move on to a laundromat as a possibility. So take a few moments to think about that, or maybe that is something that you're already thinking about. Here you see different ways that people might dry their clothes, like putting them out on lines to dry. That might be something your children are familiar with. An actual laundromat here. And then here's one from a classroom. So I wanted to give you an idea of like the real situations they might be thinking about and then how that might be done in a classroom. So here they used cardboard boxes and they used actual, the lids from soap bottles, like laundry soap bottles, to be the dial on the top. Just stick it on there and then it says like, on and off or whatever. And then you can see it here. There's a cardboard lid. And when you open that up, there's a laundry basket inside, like one of the round laundry baskets that they could throw the clothes in. And then the dryer, same thing. It's cut out, in the front. So you can actually open it and throw stuff in there. Ooh, I love some of these ideas I'm seeing over here about ways to incorporate literacy, like magazines, TVs, chairs, things to read while you're waiting to get your hair cut or waiting for the laundromat. Matching socks. Ooh, sneak a little math in there, huh? Right? Some categorization, some sorting and all that. Excellent. So that's some ideas, at least for a laundromat, that you could think about incorporating. Oh yeah, bulletin board with local ads or like a missing cat sign, like at the laundromat or something. You could have that there as well. Prices, how many quarters to dry, how many, I don't know. Do they even take quarters anymore at the laundromat? It's been a while since I've been there. How about ice cream? Like an ice cream stand. Pretty much everybody eats ice cream in some way, shape, or form, or a frozen something or other. Here I have some examples from different parts of the world. So you can do some Googling ahead of time to get pictures of things that your kids might be familiar with. So if I remember correctly, this was some kind of Korean soft serve. This is, you see this often like in Mexican ice cream shops that will have popsicles, but they also have like chamoy. So this is like tamarind with like hot spicy stuff on it on the straw. And then there's like fruit and hot sauce and probably some mango in there somewhere, some pineapple chunks. So it's like the sweet spicy thing. Here you've got somebody with like a bicycle driven ice cream cart. So again, these might be experiences from your children's home countries or home cultures, or maybe even something where they can take a picture like that home and talk with mom and dad about it in any and all of their languages to kind of prime them for this dramatic play area that you have in the classroom. Here's some more ice cream from different countries and different cultures. This is kulfi. This is from India. And so this has like pistachios in it and some dried flowers. And I believe it's made with coconut milk, or at least sometimes it's made with coconut milk. Here you have different paletas. There's milk and water-based ones with all sorts. I mean, it's like the rainbow, right? You get all sorts of different flavors. And this is halo halo from the Philippines. And so this is an ice cream dish where they put a lot of different things on top, like flan and boba and jello and plantains and beans. And this is made out of purple sweet potato. And I forgot what that stuff is. And you mix it all together. This is like palm heart stuff. You mix all this stuff together along with some ice cream that's down here at the bottom, and you eat that. So lots of different ways you can incorporate different cultures. You can even have one ice cream shop that sells stuff from all of your kids' cultures in it. And wouldn't that be cool to have them comparing and contrasting different kinds of ice cream from around the world? Well, and frankly, around the world might just be your community. Oh yeah, I have a note over here. It says coconut shavings, ice shavings. That also goes into halo halo. That's some of these little like things that you see there. Any other things that you might add to an ice cream shop? Straws, flavors. Oh, I love this. Yeah, so they're like corn on the cob. I know that might sound weird, but that's a common thing that you might get in an ice cream shop, like a Mexican ice cream shop. You can get corn on the cob or corn off the cob, like in a cup. And so with that being said, there might be things that are common at an ice cream shop that I'm not familiar with that you might be able to add. Plastic balls like ball pit balls could be ice cream scoops, right? Different kinds of like flavored waters, almost like I'm going to show my age, but like Kool-Aid. Toppings for your ice cream, right? All sorts of different things that you could incorporate and get the kids talking about, and they'll get excited about it. Pom-pom balls I see as another option for ice cream in the classroom, like fake ice cream. Cool. Excellent. Oh, sorry about that. I did not mean to advance it that fast. And then public transportation. I know someone mentioned this as a possibility. Has anybody done this in their classroom where you've replicated? I don't have pictures of this one in the classroom. So if you have and you have photos that do not have children in them and you'd be willing to share them with me so I could add them into the slide, that would be amazing. Because what I have for you is picture of actual people on public transit types of things, right? But how could we incorporate this into the classroom? Maybe it's chairs and rows that they could sit in. Then you could add in the ads inside, like the PACE bus, you know, the CTA bus. They could have that up in there. Street signs for some literacy. Excellent ideas. Maps. Money, negotiating, having to pay when you get on the bus and get off the bus, the doors, you know, sometimes rigging up some doors for them to go in and out. Oh, Connie reused an old box and made a wheel. A dad helped me create the dashboard for the bus driver and a bus driver costume. That'd be kind of cool. Cards for like paying, you know, like CTA cards, right? Those kind of thing. Transfer tickets, maps with words. Again, if your kids have the background knowledge of riding CTA and knowing about transfer cards and all that kind of stuff, wouldn't that be cool to have them doing that in the classroom and imagining where are they going to go on the bus today, right? And they may, you know, take themselves to Mexico on the CTA bus. It doesn't necessarily have to be realistic, but wouldn't that be fun, right? To let them play out real life in their own classroom, because we know children have a very strong innate desire to act out what they see in real life. And doing that in the classroom and tapping into their home culture, as we're talking about today, is a really cool way to get them thinking and engaging in different ways. So Connie had a good experience with doing that in the classroom. Oh, Greyhound bus, right? Absolutely. I don't know, is Megabus still around? You got that too, right? To go from city to city. But how do we figure out what's the right thing to do in our classroom? We've got to listen to what the kids are talking about. Pose some open-ended questions. How do they go on vacation? What is their typical mode of transportation, right? Do they take the Greyhound bus? Do they do they drive? What is it that they're doing? We've got to find that out in order to recreate it in some way in our dramatic play area. Somebody mentioned getting the cardboard from some old boxes to get donations of those sorts of things. I know you know this as early childhood teachers, that you can get donations for all sorts of things, but you never know the families in your classroom, what they might have access to. I remember a colleague of mine saying the best year was when she found out that one of her dads worked at the Elgin corrugated cardboard company, and he would bring in big sheets of nice cardboard, right? Thank goodness she found out that that's where he worked, right? And could tap into that they just sometimes had extra cardboard they could just get rid of. This also brings us back to parents volunteering in the classroom. When they're in the classroom and they can see the kinds of things that you're doing, they're more likely to be able to bring in some of those kinds of things, because they'll see how you're using it in the classroom, and it can change the play in the home as well. When they see the kinds of ways they play in an early childhood classroom, it can encourage families to replicate that at home as well, right? The more open-ended kind of dramatic play sorts of things. Boxes from Dollar Tree. Yep. Local grocery store at Costco, from what I understand, is great about giving out boxes, or can be, at least certain Costco's are. Awesome. All right. A couple of reminders for you. Jot this down on there. Remember to make it print rich. No matter what it is that you're doing, add opportunities for literacy at each of the 3 phases along the way. Whether it's price lists, with little pictures, whether it's menus, that's what you see here. This is a popsicle menu with the different flavors. It can be bilingual. It can be trilingual. There is zero harm in exposing children to other languages at any age, and including at a young age. There is no problem whatsoever to expose children that don't know Arabic to Arabic print, for example. That's not going to harm anybody or anything like that. If anything, it expands their knowledge and understanding of there being different ways to write around the world. In fact, one of the cool things is if you do have children that speak Arabic or similar languages, you can talk about how there's different directions to print. English goes from left to right, Chinese goes from top to bottom, and Arabic goes, and other languages go from right to left. And isn't that cool? And how does that change the way books are laid out? What we're used to as being the back cover is now actually the front cover when you go from right to left. Totally cool to expose everybody in the classroom to that. It's not harmful in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we have decades worth of research that tells us that exposing children to multiple languages and allowing them to continue to use all of their languages is helpful to them as they grow. So with this one here, we want to create welcoming, print-rich, dramatic play areas. Think about adding functional labels, pictures, books, other materials that are reflective of your children's cultures, familiar recipes, as you mentioned, photos of different things, spice bottles that represent the spices that your families use. Of course, you're going to need to talk to parents to find out what those are, right? Ask them to send in the empty spice bottles when they're done with them, and then you can stick it in there, right? Go back to our teacher from the example before. Mrs. Ramos labeled those panaderia shelves with the names of the different breads and baked goods that she had heard the children talking about, because the children knew how to say concha, but maybe had never seen it in writing. And so now it's in writing next to the picture of the thing that they've always heard, right? You can do the same in your class, or like elephant ears, right? You can label them. So now they can see what it looks like in writing. An interesting space, here's the big takeaway. Interesting spaces keep kids engaged, right? So keep it interesting for them. If you're starting to get bored with it, there's a pretty good chance they might get bored with it as well. Think about things like signs. If it's a store, like an open abierto sign, because you might hear the kids say things like flipping that sign and going, ya estamos abierto, now we're open, but they might not have ever thought to do that if the sign wasn't there. All right. Let's see this button here. A few additional resources. Again, you have these listed on your handout, starting with around like D or E. Let's see exactly where does it start. Supporting language. Culturally rich dramatic play areas, that's D. That's the article we were talking about where they go through the 3 different phases of play in a panaderia. Then you have another article, just want to mention to you that letter E here, this connecting culture and play, practical strategies for educators. This is from 2019. You have to be a member of NACCE with active membership in order to access this particular article. So if you do not have that, ask around, see if your principal does or your program director, maybe they do, and they can get you access to that article. Paired learning strategies for enhancing social competence in a dual language classroom or multilingual classroom. That one you can get to. And then this is a really cool book that you might have in your professional library, or you might actually have it at your local public library. I know a lot of public libraries here in Illinois are part of a lending, like a massive lending library system where you can actually check out books from someplace else and it comes to your home library. This is a cool book, Roots and Wings, Affirming Culture and Preventing Bias in Early Childhood. What I love, there's a lot of things I like about this book, but this particular book, the back end of it has over 100 different activities that you can include in your classroom. Like tomorrow, we're talking about race and culture and stereotypes and incorporating culture and things like that. So just some really cool ideas, I think, that you might find in there that may be useful to you in your classroom. All right, we're getting close to the end here. Any last questions or thoughts that you would like to share? You can put them in the chat. I'm going to double check the chat as well. Oh, somebody made a gingerbread house out of cardboard sheets. That sounds cool. Oh, there's a picture of it. Oh my goodness. Check out the chat. There's a really cool picture of a gingerbread house. Holy cow, that's cool. That is awesome. Okay, whoever put that in there, Kate, if you would be willing to share that with me, I'm not, like, you don't have to, but if you want to, if you could send it to me, I would love to share and give you guys credit for making that really cool thing. That's my email right there. Oh, which book am I talking about? It is the last one on your handout sheet. It is actually letter G as in giraffe, Roots and Wings, Affirming Culture and Preventing Bias in Early Childhood Classrooms from 2016. It was written by Stacy York. It's a really nice book, I think, to reference. It's got some cool ideas in it. And like I said, check out your public library. They might be able to get it for you from another local library, so you don't have to even go out and buy it. All right, let me give you a moment to put some questions in the chat if you have any at this point. It's okay if you don't.